Howdy, friends. Thought I'd talk to you today about something I get asked about a lot. Um, that is the process that you go through when you try to write a song. And I don't know, process, just that question alone vexed me for many years. I didn't know that I really had a process. Um, but I think over years I have kind of developed one. Um, it just sort of happened by itself. I never started out to have one, but then I never really started out to figure out how to do this in any kind of given way. Anyway, for a long time, well, first of all, let me a little history on myself. I started writing, I think I wrote my first song when I was 12 or 13 years old. And it was a completely juvenile little lovesick song I wrote about a girl at the time. And oh shit, we actually played it in a band for a while. And then I wrote several other songs. This was when I was in my first band when I started when I was very young. And then played several of my other songs on a regular basis too. But the thing was, I was never a songwriter like, where you, consistently are writing songs. Even when I became a teenager and went into my 20s and such, I wrote maybe one song a year for many years. I mean, one song a year. And you can't really be a songwriter like that now, can you? I didn't have anything to say. It was one of the main things. I was just busy doing other things, and I played music and stuff, but I didn't really write songs very often. But like I said, I'd write maybe like one a year, and I certainly had songwriting heroes at the time and people I listened to a lot, like John Prine and John Gorka and Steve Earle, and later on Chris Knight became. Chris Knight was really somebody I went, yeah, I relate to that voice quite a lot. I think I could say something like he does. I think I could talk about things the way he does, and it wouldn't be wrong to do it in that sort of voice or that sort of point of view. So, I was kind of always working my way in that direction. To be honest, it wasn't until about maybe a dozen years ago. Sometimes there's a life event that happens that just opens up a side of your brain that wasn't there before, and that's kind of what happened with me. That kind of took me from that occasional songwriter to somebody who's more or less doing it all the time. And I just went through a very, very painful time in my life. Um, um, just a lot of personal issues going on with my family, and I had a child who was going off the rails at the time, and marriage broke up, and it was just a terrible, terribly painful, awful time. Had a lot of alone time at that point too, and there wasn't a lot keeping me alive at that time. I did have several good friends, and of course I had a very special woman in my life too that did. But there's still, when you're at home alone, there's a lot of time you have to think about things, and it was just I think that's when I started to open up that other side of my brain to things. And of course, I didn't write just about painful things. I wrote about all kinds of things at that point, but it did sort of blow open this wall, and it might have been too that it just made me more honest and capable of being more honest about the way I felt about things, or the way things hit me, or just just a much more authentic sort of no bullshit um, approach. And that's when I started to think of songwriting as an actual art, and just a way to really express yourself, and in a way that's not, and this is key, that is not all about you, but it is relatable to so very many people. A lot of people do go through terrible times, and you know, um, and they go through really wonderful times too. And I've written about those quite a bit as well. but being able to make what your experience is universal was a really important sort of growth that I went through, where I realized, more to approach things more that way. Um, so what would happen with me during that time? I lived out in the country largely by myself, so I had a lot of time, alone time, like I said. And honestly, the place I lived, um, it was very zen in a way. We had farm animals, and you know, especially like in the wintertime. Like for instance, I would come home, the house would be cold. I mean, cold. There was no heat. There was a fireplace, so I would have to start a fire, and so that's the first thing I'd do. And then I'd go feed and water the horses, chickens, come back in, check on the fire, start dinner, check on the fire, go back, make sure the animals were all set for the night, come back, check on the fire, finish dinner, eat dinner. Probably started having a few drinks around that time too, which was its own little problem at the time. And then by the time I would get finished with all that, it was just me and the guitar in the chair. And I would sit and strum. And I think really what happened in retrospect was I was just really exhausted. And exhaustion means that your brain is kind of open to things. And you might be open to, well, again, either you're opening part of your brain that's not normally open, or you're opening it to the universe. And so I'd be sitting there strumming a few chords, and melody would kind of come to mind, and then maybe a few lines would appear, and then maybe another line related to that that sounded really good would appear. Anyway, something would just start to happen, and I was always just shocked and grateful when it would, and then I would run with it and try to finish it. And of course, back then I was trying to finish songs very quickly. At that time I was toying with getting back into music. I hadn't been in music for many years, and I was just kind of toying with it. But it started to occur to me it'd be cool to, with Southern Illinois having so many venues, you might be able to go out and play your songs for people, if they're relatable. So I started trying to finish as many as I could. I wasn't being a real careful editor at the time. If I could get, two verses of the song, you damn right I was going to finish it that night, whether the third verse was any good at all. But I was really pounding them out as quickly as I could, because every one seemed like a rare gift, and they were, but I was kind of not very mature in my approach at that time. I realized, though, at one point, maybe a year into it, that the way these things would happen was like what I said, being quiet and being open and being receptive to receiving something. I know that sounds all mystical, ooh, and shit, and I was not that kind of person, believe me. Still questionable how much I am that kind of person, but I swear that's kind of the way it started to happen. And then I started to realize that the work involved, the work of being a songwriter, was getting good at putting myself in that mindset and learning how to do that on a regular basis. And that's where I started to work on this. And when I did that, it really started to happen for me a lot more regularly, and with a lot better quality, in my opinion. I mean, I think my writing got better like that. I hadn't really thought about that too much, other than, when people would ask me, I would actually kind of say that, but I didn't realize, I had never heard, I'd never really taken an interest in other songwriters and their approach, so to speak. So when I started to get curious about this whole process thing, I did start to kind of listen to what other songwriters were saying about it, and I was shocked when I found out some of them were saying kind of the same thing. Like they would just receive them rather than write them. And honestly, that freaked me out a little bit, because I had never heard them say that before. I never knew that. That was just my honest experience. So when I found out that was kind of a common experience. I was like, well, maybe I'm doing this kind of right. I guess I don't know. So that's how it was. That's been my philosophy for the last maybe 10 years of writing is trying to get my mind quiet and open and you can start with an idea or you could. There were times I know during those days when I would come home and I just knew I had a song in me that night because probably of the day I'd had or something like that. And um, and that was often the truth. That's often what would happen. But it was really all about getting quiet and listening for it. You know. And again, I don't mean to be all weird about it. Maybe I was listening to the other side of my brain or some other place in my heart or something. Or maybe it does come from somewhere else. I don't know. Um, and I'm not saying they're all, you know, pearls of wisdom or some shit, but they do seem to just kind of come out of the ether. And I understand now more about that mysterious thing, the muse and stuff. I understand it in a more concrete way now, having experienced something like that many times over the last few years. Um, Recently, um, I watched a biography on Leonard Cohen. It was on Netflix recently, and he was talking about the same thing. And so I've been, like, in recent months, I've been much more intentional about it, almost kind of saying a little prayer and saying a little, I'm getting myself in a position, being quiet for a few minutes and saying, okay, and honestly saying, well, okay, if you're there, I'm ready to receive. I'm ready to receive something. And that's actually kind of worked the last few times. So it's always a little scary when you finish writing one too, because it's like you never know. You always fear, like, is this the last one I'm ever going to write? Am I ever going to get a visit like this again? I don't know. It's a deeply satisfying um, thing to do when it happens. There's nothing better than when you get one that you know, that moves you. That there's nothing better than that, really, in terms of being a creative adult or a creative person at all. It's just a deeply satisfying thing when it does happen, and I'm always deeply grateful for it because, again, I never know, is this going to be the last one? And so, kind of given all this, I've had people say, well, you should go, Steve Earle has a writing camp, and there's these festivals where they have writing camps and stuff and workshops and all this, and I'm always like, that doesn't appeal to me in the least. Um, and I'm sure they work great for a lot of people, but I just can't see myself ever being a part of something like that because it's like maybe it's the way it evolved with me, or where it came from, where it started. Like I said, kind of rooted in this terrible time of my life. It's the whole thing is too deeply personal to me to sort of break down. I mean, I'm talking to you about it right now, but I don't think I could, like, teach it, or I don't think I could learn it from anybody. I mean, I certainly listen to other songwriters and I certainly respect them and go, oh, I see what they did there, and I wish I could do that, and try to be, more mindful of using, you know, um, stronger verbs or, better adjectives, whatever you want to say, and being more unpredictable and stuff. All that I get, but I don't know. I don't think I could ever. I don't see the point in those things for me at all. And also along with that, I've never really tried writing with anybody else. And I know a lot of people do that. I know they do that in the professional setting quite a bit, and I understand why. And I think some of it's, good creative dynamic juices flowing. And I also think there's a lot of business involved in it, which is fine. But I don't see myself ever writing with anyone for the reasons I just mentioned. The whole thing is just too personal to me, and I just think I go about it. That's the way I do it. I don't think I'll ever change that. I certainly don't write for a market, which, a lot of people would say, well, that means you're not a songwriter. If you're not trying to write for market, if you can't approach it that way. I had one guy ask me one time, well, do you listen to what's popular now before you write? And I mean, he was being serious about, do you really want to be a songwriter? And this was somebody who was in the business and would know. And I thought, no, I don't. As radio has become more splintered lately, and you can dial in to more exactly the kind of stuff you like. Yeah, I have listened more, but I don't ever try to write for that crowd or marketplace. So I just write for me, and I don't worry about it. And either it'll touch somebody else or it doesn't. And it's okay. I mean, I don't depend on this. I do it because I love to do it, and I feel like I should do it, so I do it. And I don't worry about the rest of it. Anyway, guys, thank you for hanging out with me. I don't know if you're going to listen to this, care. But I am trying to, be a little more open with who I am as an artist and as a wannabe songwriter, if nothing else. I call myself that. I always, I don't mean to, lift myself up, but it's something that I want to do and I hope to be able to do. So I thought I would just share that a little bit with me. What I do with you, and anyway, I'm babbling. Thanks for tuning in, and maybe we'll talk soon. That new CD, that new record is going to be out in a week or so. I'm really proud of it, guys. Really proud of it. The last record I was very proud of, and this one, in my opinion, is, well, you'll have to see. Anyway, thanks for hanging out.